All right, today we are talking about preparing students for graduate and doctoral studies, discussing tips for getting into graduate schools or PhD programs, and what to know about when in a graduate program in psychology, various tracks. So this is useful for undergraduates, those who are in graduate school, those who are looking to be in a clinical role, particularly those who will be practicing telehealth moving forward. And to discuss this amazing topic, we have, and we're very grateful to have Dr. Whitney Wall with us. Dr. Wall is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at Fayetteville State University and serves as the graduate program coordinator for their online MA program in general psychology, as well as two professional graduate certificate programs, one in professional psychology and another in behavioral research. So Dr. Wall not only teaches various undergraduate and graduate level courses, including health psychology, personal adjustment, and research methods, but she's also a counseling psychologist with a background in public health, and her interests include patient-centered, culturally sensitive healthcare delivery, culturally sensitive health promotion, community participation research, and the associations between social system injustices and health. As a licensed clinical psychologist who works with therapists at the Purpose Center in Durham, North Carolina, you're bringing a complete circle of well-rounded experience here, and we're really grateful to have you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. Yes.
Absolutely. So I know we're covering kind of a broad range of topics, but there are those who are considering going back to school who might already have a bachelor's or maybe even a master's degree in a clinical mental health field, whether it be a psychology or, like I said, our counseling, social work, whatever it might be. And they are probably bombarded with a whole host of options that will allow them to serve people today, to serve clients, to serve patients, as well as navigating telehealth. So there's a lot to discuss here that you have firsthand experience with. But before we get started, let's backtrack a little bit. And I want to hear a little bit about yourself, particularly what got you started in the field of psychology, what drew you to this work that you're doing in particular. So if you don't mind, I'll turn this over to you.
Sure. Yes. Well, I kind of had a winding path. I remember being a student in undergrad and having absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. So those of you who are out there and just unsure about your path, I think that's a really common experience. I ended up getting a master's in public health, and it was really because of a lack of other options. I was kind of interested in public health. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, and I was waiting tables at the time and getting some pressure from my parents to go back to school, and just decided to take that route and got a master's in public health. And it was a great experience. I learned a lot and, enjoy that field. And I worked at a college when I graduated as the director of health promotion. And
Where was that?
That was at Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay, wonderful.
Beautiful location to be at.
Yeah, seems like you have a southeastern thing going on here. Yeah.
Definitely. And I did that for 5 years. And my office was housed in the counseling center. And I worked with a lot of therapists there. And, we did programs together and just kind of became friends with a lot of the counselors and therapists. And I learned more about what they were doing and their day-to-day jobs. And I just loved, what they were doing. And I just really thought that it was a good fit for me. Public health is great, but you're working with very small incremental change over a very long duration of time. So you're looking for success is like a 1% decrease over a decade. And you're not getting a lot of immediate feedback. And I really, kind of wanted to work more with individuals.
Sure, moving the hand on that thermometer, you're probably ending your day and saying, is it moving at all?
Yeah.
And having to keep that big picture in mind
Yeah,
can
not
really be
getting a lot of
challenging.
like immediate feedback,
Yeah.
or immediate relationships
Mhm.
and engagement with people that you're helping. You're kind of a little bit removed when you're doing kind of like large scale programming. So yeah, I wanted to kind of like have that more immediate relationship, that a more immediate impact. And I also did my own personal therapy at that time. So it was like the perfect storm of kind of like me experiencing it and really growing from it, and then also seeing it in a professional way and like wanting to do that as a career. And I was very lost, because I was like, I want this job, but I have a degree in something else. And so what do I do? And I ended up just really taking the leap to go back to school. And I ended up going back for my PhD in counseling psychology. And it was kind of a big leap because I didn't have a lot of the background and training that some of the other applicants had. And I
Sure.
applied for a lot of programs and got a lot of rejections.
Wow.
And yeah, and ended up finally landing at University of Florida, a great program. And, I ended up, in the field of counseling psychology. And I thought I wanted to practice, and I do practice, but I really, while I was in school, in graduate school, I developed a passion for research and teaching as well. And so I, I'm kind of
It's
doing
like
it
it was
all.
meant to be, but you never know. Right? When you
Yeah.
were waiting tables, you were probably practicing research in psychology, and you didn't quite realize it.
Absolutely. I think I've learned more waiting tables than maybe any of my other, educational experiences about people and, absolutely. But yes, yeah, so it's a winding path. I never was quite sure where I couldn't have planned it out. And I like to
Mhm.
tell students that, you just can't plan it out. You have to kind of go, one by one, each day, each decision, each, path that you go
Sure.
along. You just have to kind of roll with it, and can't possibly predict what exciting things might be in store for you. So
So would you say that there's an element of trust needed to know that your future self is capable of making a good decision that you can't foresee right now? You-
yeah.
it's completely dark in a sense. You have some goals and some dreams, but you kind of have to know that I'm the kind of person that will make a great choice. Will be able to help people and
Yes.
just have some trust that it's going to work out.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think usually your opportunities are going to broaden rather than narrow once you start going down a new path. So you might be thinking you want to do one thing, and that's actually a positive thing. You're going to have more opportunities open up to you.
So
So
true.
yeah.
Right? You're in a room and you have to squeeze through that window sometimes to get outside. And
Yeah,
now there's a lot of freedom there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely. That's great. And then what drew you to what you're doing currently? So you mentioned that you were drawn into clinical practice, but then also the research. And but now you're not, I'm sure you're doing some of all of that still, but then also the work you do with students. How did that progress?
Yeah, so I really wanted to find, I decided I wanted to stay in academia, and I wanted to find a job where I could not be solely research focused, because a lot of jobs in academia, you find yourself really, needing to dedicate most of your time to research. And I wanted to be able to have more of a balance. So I really wanted to mentor students. I wanted to teach, and I wanted that to be valued. And I also wanted to be able to do clinical work. And so that master's or the program at Fayetteville State University is a perfect fit for me. It's a wonderful place to work, and it's a wonderful university, and it fit everything I was looking for. At the time, we offered a clinical master's program, so I was able to teach a lot of clinical courses, which I
Mhm.
really really enjoyed. But since then, there's been some state accreditation shifts that have resulted in us changing our program structure a little bit. But I still, teaching in a master's program there, and then doing the clinical work on the side, which, really, when I work with students, my practice informs my work with students, and my work with students
Absolutely.
informs my practice. It's very,
Do
you
they
know,
ever teach you anything
my
that you
student,
can
my
use in
students
your
and my
practice?
clients, absolutely. Yeah, they're very inspiring. And the students at our university are just, they're really impressive. We have a lot of students who are non-traditional. We have a lot of students who wear a lot of hats, are parents and caregivers and working full time and going to school. And I'm very impressed often by how much my students are juggling and how much
Sure.
they're able to do. And Yeah, I'm inspired by them constantly, and my clients as well. I'm inspired by their risks and vulnerability. And, it's always, all clinicians will tell you that, you always kind of receive in your clients what you need yourself. So you a lot of times are like, working with the client on something and you're like, gosh, this is really forcing me to not be a hypocrite and do it myself.
That's such a humbling experience.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. Mhm.
similar, I think, for those with children. I think there's a similar experience when you realize that they start to express certain, whether it be mannerisms or things they need to work on, and you're like, wait a minute. Um, a little bit of a side topic, but I have a son who presents with ADHD,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize that I was experiencing this my whole life as well.
Oh,
And so
wow.
as I learned to grow more patient and show compassion to his ways of learning, of doing things, I started to realize, wait a minute, this is me,
Yeah.
and I've not extended that to myself. So, absolutely I can see that, and how in clinical work in particular, you're diving really deep with those who are being vulnerable. Yeah, probably takes a lot of self-reflection, humility, and courage also to then face those in the midst of all the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, talking about it's a really great field. I feel very lucky to be in it. So for those of you who are, looking to kind of pursue more of that, mental health counseling or helping profession, it really is a very rewarding job.
I'm going to
Personally.
take a moment to share. You mentioned that you are at Fayetteville State and some of the programs that you're doing there. So I'm going to take a moment here to share. Oh, let's see. Is it sharing right now?
Mhm. It
There
is.
we go. Perfect. So yeah, the Department of Psychology at Fayetteville State. This seems like there are a lot of options. Do you want to tell us a little bit about University of North Carolina, Fayetteville?
Yeah, Fayetteville State University. It's part of the UNC system,
Mhm.
and it's an historically Black college and university and HBCU. And we have an undergraduate program. We have also just a fully online undergraduate degree completion program. So you can take
Mhm.
you have your associates, you can kind of transfer over and complete fully online your undergraduate degree. I work mainly with our graduate program as the coordinator. And for our graduate program, we have a general master's degree in psychology that's fully online, and that can be completed in a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a really great program. We do 8-week courses, and we've really condensed the courses. And we've also it's
Sure.
fully online and it's asynchronous. So most of our students are actually working full time and they're able to do kind of the coursework on their own time.
Does someone need to have some sort of advanced standing in psychology in order to qualify for that year and a half?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have students from all different majors. So you do
Mhm.
not have to have a major in psychology. You do have to have at least taken general psychology or psychology 101 and at
Mhm.
least one other psychology course. So you have some introduction to psychology. But many students in other majors have taken that as like, part of their general degree plan.
Sure.
And and we can also help students, get those credentials or their prerequisites before getting into the program if needed. But yes, a great program because it's so condensed and short. It's not a clinical program, but we do have a lot of students who are looking to use it as a stepping stone to try to get into more clinically oriented programs and doctoral programs. We have a strong focus in research training. So we have students who want to get into kind of the research field as far as
Mhm.
research coordinator, research associate, or further graduate school. We do offer a behavioral research certificate that students can get alone, or they can add it to the master's degree that will give them hands-on research experience. And again, all of this, you can do all this in a year and a half. So we really, kind of are proud of all that we're able to provide in such a short period of time.
Yes. I mean, from
Yeah.
here, I see that in addition to focusing on research, you are focusing on human growth and development in every facet: biological, behavioral, cognitive, emotional, and um, social and cultural diversity, and then also communication skills and relationships, which will be incredibly useful to them regardless of which subfield or subset of psychology they choose to pursue.
Yeah. Yeah,
In
we have
addition
students
to,
from all different fields, like, physical therapist, human resources, business that are just looking to kind of hone in on their skills, their people skills, their interpersonal skills, their soft skills. And this is a great program for that. Just being able to kind of provide a big overview of psychology and the tools in a short period of time. And we also have quite a few students who are looking to teach at the college level. So our program provides the requirements for most community colleges for teaching at the community college level, psychology.
Wonderful.
So we have students who are just looking to teach as well that take our program.
That's great. I'll make sure we include a link to this in any description of this, so that anyone viewing today can check that out. I highly encourage it. It seems like a very thorough, well thought out, well prepared program. And I think that in addition to that program that you are coordinating and that you're teaching in, you mentioned you still have clinical practice. You're working with these students who are inspiring you. Moving into some of the new challenges we experience in today's world, from, you could say, the after effects of COVID, but social distancing, telehealth, increased use of technology. I know that in terms of addictions and other challenges that are facing our society sometimes in growing numbers. How do you help connect these students who are so eager to serve with the needs of populations that they might serve, whether it be in a research capacity or teaching, future clinical capacity, whatever that might be?
Yeah, and I think there's a real need. I was actually just listening to another podcast about just how our world is really transforming, especially in the United States, to where we're now valuing kind of the soft skills and the relational skills, and a lot of what we teach in psychology and a lot of these, counselor skills are becoming so much more important in all sectors, the business world, all the science fields. Everyone's really valuing these skills a lot more, because a lot of what we formerly might have valued, decades ago, which was, just being able to crunch numbers and,
Sure.
Being able to do all that, is being really outsourced now.
Sure.
Or artificial intelligence is doing it. And so I think even more increasingly, these skills that you have to build relationships and, to design, relationships and different programs that work is really, really important. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I think
Ethical judgment.
judgment.
Right.
Totally. Yeah. Making critical thinking and good choices. All of that is just so important now. And I think, there is a need for sure in all sectors, not just in counseling, but to kind of use these people skills and these relational skills to be able to take them in all different ways. But I think really helping students find out what they're passionate about and what they really want to do, I think, is kind of the need, because there's so many needs out there,
Yes.
that there's so much out there, so many different areas that people can help in the helping profession. But I think helping students find out what they really want to do, and then finding the right pathway to meet that goal. So I think that's one of the things that I help students do a lot, is to really understand, well, what do you exactly want to do, and what's the right pathway to get there? Because a lot of times there's a confusion around that. And
Yes.
so
Well,
I
that's so
usually
critical. And it's so critical that they take that risk, knowing that the skills they receive can't really be taken away from them.
yes.
Like, you could find yourself in good times or bad times in your life financially, in terms of relationships, but your skills that you bring with you along the way, no one can take those, and it applies to everything. You mentioned waiting tables. For me, I have some of a current role in sales and working with universities, working with organizations, and trying to find what is really going to help the most people most effectively. And from everyone I speak with, they say, well, background in psychology is really going to help you to be a helper in this role, to not be someone who's throwing information at people, but someone who's really building an ethical relationship to help people.
Yeah.
So that's, even in the world of sales, for those that choose to make very high six-figure incomes, they recognize the value of psychology in order to be really effective at helping people connect their wants with reality, or with with the options that are out there. So absolutely, it's critical that you're guiding them towards all the options that exist.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I recommend my students do is they find somebody in the real world that's doing something that they would like to be doing themselves. And like, so what would be your dream job? Find someone who's doing it and talk to them. So find out what path that they took and what credentials are needed, what education is needed, and what their recommendations would be. So that's something that I have a lot of my students do. And one thing I find is a lot of people or students want to be, especially if they're in the helping field or interest in the helping field, they want to become a licensed psychologist. And then when I ask them what they actually really want to do, it doesn't really require that level of licensure. And
wow.
so I think that's one thing I like really help students understand is, what you kind of are saying you want to do, you can do with a master's degree. And if in the training that you're going to get, if you go for a doctorate or a PhD, is going to be much more in research and research focus when you're saying you want to do clinical work and counseling. So just making sure that the training you're getting and the credentials you're getting align with what you hope to do. And so I don't know if it would be helpful for me to kind of go over the different types of pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. And would we find that on the link that I share as well, where some of those pathways be listed there, or?
Well, so we don't offer a clinical program. We just offer
Sure.
the general program. So that wouldn't be the best route. But I do have a lot of our students in that program and our undergraduate students who are looking to do clinical work. And I know that a lot of your viewers are interested in that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
okay. Yeah. Well, it's important to think about what pathway is best for you. And if you're interested in doing clinical work and, opening up your own private practice or doing your own private practice of telehealth or something of that nature, you can do that with a master's degree. So you don't need to go on for the doctorate or the PhD level to open up a private practice and provide counseling services. And I suggest that kind of the more common pathways to that route would be becoming a licensed social worker, a licensed clinical social worker, or becoming a licensed mental health counselor. And one of the things that's really tricky when you're out there looking for degrees in counseling is you want to make sure if you're getting a master's degree in counseling that it's CACREP accredited. So that's a big important piece that is really necessary. There are some programs out there that advertise being counseling programs or counseling master's programs that aren't accredited. So it's really important that you find that accreditation if you're going to get that master's in counseling. There's also master's in family therapy. I'm not as familiar with that path. It's a smaller field, but that's another option for and you might know more about.
Seems to be a smaller but growing field, and I know that a lot of it is managing relationships. So my biggest encounter with it is here in my work with the Telehealth Certification Institute, where those seeking training for marriage and family therapy are dealing with group sessions and managing helpful discussions in that format, which is so incredibly different than being in the same room and the clinical dynamics of managing a healthy conversation in the same room versus virtually. So, that's been one of my exposure to that in this role has mostly been from that perspective, but definitely a growing field.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. And it is interesting how you can do so much virtually, even family therapy. I do a lot of couples work actually. And so, managing all of that in the virtual space is interesting, but it's sometimes actually helpful to do it virtually. There's a lot of benefits to that as well. So
sure. Yeah. Do you want to speak to some? Well, we can get to that later. Speak to some of those benefits.
I will. But the last thing I'll just mention too. So those are the pathways that there's also, if you do want to, get the PhD or the doctoral level licensure, if you want to do the clinical work, it's just a lot more of a commitment. It's going to be a lot longer training program that's going to incorporate a lot of research training as well. And so I usually recommend students or individuals who are interested in being a professor or doing research, that would be the right path. If you know in your heart you're only interested in doing clinical work, you might not want to take that path. The added benefit for clinical work, being a licensed psychologist, is being able to kind of be the lead on doing assessments and different clinical evaluations that you need a licensure to be a licensed psychologist to do. But other than that, master's level providers can do almost everything a psychologist can do, outside
I
of
did not know that.
yeah,
So
outside
that's
of, I
really good to
mean,
know.
maybe psychologists wouldn't want me saying that, but outside of the, assessments, the a lot of the doctoral level assessments, as far as counseling is concerned, absolutely. There's, really amazing master's level counselors out there that are doing really impressive things. So
Yes,
there's and opening, having private practices and leading trainings and leading the field in a lot of different areas. Esther Perel is one that comes to mind, who is like one of
sure.
the most, amazing couples therapists to ever exist. And she is, master's level. So there's
Absolutely. Okay, I misunderstood what you said. So yes, I'm very familiar with the master's level therapists in counseling, marriage and family therapy, social work. I guess I thought you were referring to a master's level in psychology
and that
offering
is
therapy. Is that something as well?
and that's something else I'll mention. That's one other pathway. You can have a master's in you could be a master's level psychologist in certain states.
Okay.
So it's called an LPA licensure. In North Carolina, where I am, actually recognized as the LPA licensure. So there's programs that you can go to become a master's level psychologist, and it would require you being supervised by a psychologist upon graduation. As far as I know there's some different rules and regulations that are changing around that, but as far as I know, that's still the case. And that the limit to that is not all states are going to recognize that license. Sure. So it's a little bit tricky when you think about, getting a degree in that.
Well, and especially, and this kind of segues into the topic of teletherapy, a lot more is opening up. It usually was reserved to those in sort of a life coaching role to be able to offer national services, unless someone was going to go and get licensed in every single state. We've seen providers get licensed in upwards of a dozen or 24 states. But what's increasingly occurring in the field of psychology, and then now clinical counseling as well, is compacts between states that are recognizing we can say that this is a standard of care that's acceptable, and any clinician in any state that agrees to this compact, who is able to demonstrate that ethical standard of care, can get this compact license or this interstate license. And that's a new thing. And, I know that when we work with international providers in various countries, they are often surprised that someone licensed in New York can't practice in California under that license. And so it's definitely, in many ways, it's kind of an exciting thing to see that more providers will be available to maybe a wider variety of people nationwide. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it makes so much sense. There's no reason to not have that, to be able to open up the state boundaries and to be able to do that, especially with telehealth growing so much. I actually just got PsyPAC certified, which is the psychology one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. So it's cool. I mean, it's just, kind of getting the credentials.
Is that like 30 states now, or 30, something like that? Or
yeah,
20,
something like that. Yeah. And I haven't done anything outside of North Carolina yet, but it is, but it's neat because I have friends that are all over the country that are doing clinical work. And I'm starting to kind of, focus a lot on couples work and couples counseling. And that's more of my specialty at the moment. And just thinking of, I can have, these friends that are working with individual clients that could refer their clients to couples counseling with me via telehealth, and just being able to have this wide network to really have a specialization to be able to recruit.
Exactly. You find the niche that you are able to make the greatest impact, right? And then cast that net wider to those that are in desperate need of that particular specialty. That's so valuable.
Yeah, it's really exciting times, I think. Yeah, I think it's good. The telehealth, I know personally, I'll speak to a little bit of my experience as the provider. And, I was doing in-person therapy before COVID, as most of us were. And after COVID, of course, everything went online. And I've, remained telehealth fully because mainly I enjoy it, but my clients are requesting it. They don't want to go back. So it's really neat to think about it, how it used to feel like, oh, it's such a disadvantage that we're going to have to connect virtually, and really seeing like, wow, this is actually really working. And it's really, doesn't the relationship builds, the connection, the growth, the change, all the good, components to therapy can happen over telehealth.
It's so great to hear that you've experienced that, because we hear stories like that all the time, both for video sessions and surprisingly for many phone sessions. There's always been so much hesitance to delve into phone therapy, or a lot of criticism. But I know that that's been very valuable to so many people unable to otherwise access care. And that, there definitely are drawbacks and benefits with each method of providing, this help to people. But as you mentioned, what are some unique benefits that you've experienced in telehealth with your clients?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that's really cool is the ability to kind of maintain consistent service, even when people are maybe like, out, because where people would have to cancel, they don't have to cancel anymore. So I feel like there's ability to maintain more consistency in our sessions. I've noticed that. I've also noticed some benefits to being kind of in their home with them that I wouldn't have expected. I'm thinking of a teen client I worked with, and just like, we were talking about, her taking risks of wearing clothes that felt like more true to her. And she could go grab them in her closet and pull it out and show it to me, what she was like hoping to have the courage to wear. And it was just such a cool experience to be able to, have that like real time in her room, like her showing me things. So I think that was cool. And I think sharing, even like sharing links and, worksheets and different things, I guess you can do that in person, but it's cool to just kind of virtually be able to look things up really quickly on, and share it. And we can listen to songs together much more easily than we used to. And
I think the research shows people generally feel less inhibition to being vulnerable, to opening up about their thoughts, about their feelings, about the things they've been experiencing, maybe because they come from their own space in a place of safety. I don't know if that's been your experience, but I definitely seems like a lot of people open up more virtually than they might being in the same room together.
Yeah, I think people are really comfortable in their homes. Yeah. And I think it's interesting with the couples too, because I do a lot of the couples, and I thought, well, that's going to be really hard virtually to but they're actually more comfortable. Like they're on their own couch, from their own home. And I think they can kind of maybe fall into their patterns that they need to work on a little bit more easily because they're, where it happens. And so I think it's been a very positive thing overall. And I'll also say, just because I'm, work with students too, and I teach almost fully online at the moment. And I also feel like there's so many more benefits that we're realizing to the virtual classroom. And just, I know like a lot of my assignments that I give students, I'm able to kind of be more creative and think of, different things that they can do. Like they can, attend a lecture, virtually in California, like, and it makes sense to be able to just post that as an assignment because everything they're doing is virtual. And I have them do Toastmasters. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am.
Yeah, so it's like a public speaking for our graduate program. I had them attend a Toastmasters meeting, which is really hard to do if you're, kind of working full time. And, but if I open it up to virtual Toastmasters, they can attend any Toastmasters meeting anywhere in the country that has open meetings, which is hundreds. And so they can find the exact time slot and the exact, one that works for them. So it's just so much more easy to kind of accommodate cool assignments like that.
Yes,
And
what a huge benefit. I mean, I think that we easily take it for granted how much is at our fingertips, how many skills, how much information. And so kind of giving them these assignments within the program to do something that maybe they could have done, but now there's a reason, or there's a motivation, there's a goal line in sight. To give that extra motivation to take advantage of these things. That's really, really phenomenal. And like you said, they can leave the program, they can graduate out of the program and continue to utilize the skills learned because it doesn't require them to sit in that classroom.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I know in our master's program, we do, because we're virtual, we have no other option. We have, they have to do a lot of their public speaking and their presentations, virtually over virtual recordings like this or, Zooms and that sort of thing. And, really, it's not like an alternate that's not as good as the real thing. This is what they're going to be doing in the real world.
yes,
They
yes,
need to learn how to speak over Zoom and not get any feedback, because that's what happens a lot of times virtually, when you're doing
absolutely.
like
How
a
do you
large
help them
meeting.
prepare for that?
Yes, absolutely. So it's actually like very appropriate to have online training, because a
Mhm.
lot of their real world jobs is going to be everything's going to be moving in that direction.
Shameless plug, Telehealth Certification Institute.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
in
absolutely.
there.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah, we've seen that. We've seen some people successfully navigate the materials that are out there, and really prepare themselves. At the same time, you don't know what it is that you don't know, right?
Mhm.
So while you are capable of so much, each of us is capable of so much on our own. It really helps to have others that we are exposed to, and giving us assignments that we are kind of opening ourselves humbly and vulnerably to, and saying, what is it that I'm missing?
Yeah.
From those who are in the field doing this every day, and from all the research that exists in order to increase that quality of care virtually,
Yeah.
what is it that we're missing? And what for you, what was the biggest adjustment, right? Because I'm sure you're transferring the majority of your counseling, of your therapy skills, you're transferring from in person to virtual, but then there's many that require an adjustment. What were some big adjustments for you?
Um, I think for me personally, I think it was, for whatever reason, it's easier for me to do a lot of back-to-back clients in person than
Mhm,
virtually. I find, I guess you're just maybe, when you're in person, you're standing up more, you're walking around more,
mhm,
I don't know, you're not just like stuck looking at the same
sure.
place for the whole time. So I think I've had to like kind of adapt to, kind of walking around the block whenever I have a chance, or,
Yeah.
doing something, because I notice a big difference in just feeling, you know, kind of in a zone that I don't want to be in after too
Yeah.
long.
So recognizing how your body's reacting to this new format, how your mind is reacting to this new
Hmm.
format, and then, maybe there's the trade-off then between being able to have fewer cancellations, and
Hmm.
then, being able to take care of yourself in
Yes.
whatever that might look like, whether
Yep.
it's exercise, walking, reading, thinking,
Hmm.
caring for others, as many of us have to do in the midst of our work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but it's great. I'm sure you probably offer trainings maybe that are related to that sort of thing, like
We
self-care
do.
with telehealth, because it is different.
Yes. Yep. For those in education in
Mhm.
particular, we have courses for educators, for self-care,
Mhm.
for those who are in clinical work, self-care, those dealing with, I'm blanking now on the word, not vicarious trauma, but what's that term for the burnout that one experiences, or the I'm gonna have to look that up. Anyways, my mind just blanked on it, but uh, not vicarious trauma. What's the term used for someone who is experiencing burnout from helping a number of other people dealing with very severe circumstances? Um,
I don't know, but I
I,
know what you're talking about.
you know what I'm talking about too.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I'm
Yeah.
not crazy here. There
No.
is, yeah, we offer trainings on that as well. I didn't have that
Okay.
prepared, obviously. But absolutely, right? So caring for yourself, recognizing what you are experiencing in the work that you're doing, whether it's virtually or in the same room with those that you're caring for, and
Mhm.
then the skills of not burning out. There's actually some good tricks and hacks to getting more time on screen without feeling the effects of it. And one big one that always surprises people is to turn off your self view, to hide yourself. And
Oh, I love that idea.
it's one of the first things that we teach people who take any of our training. So everyone watching this now is getting a free preview. But there's so much mental and exhaustion of the amount of stimulus that occurs when you're viewing an image of yourself, looking at
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror while you're talking to someone.
Yeah.
It's very tiring. It's very distracting. You
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't normally do that. You wouldn't have a mirror behind the
Yeah.
person in the same room so you can see yourself talking to them.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we notice. It's little, but it makes a big difference. So there are a lot of things like that really go a long way to having a better experience.
I'll have to look into that training.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And clinician confidence. So, you display confidence due to your virtual work. And I'm sure that you have had so much exposure to virtual work and virtual, both as an educator, as a therapist. But the confidence you bring into a session then gets relayed to the patient, to the client.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't feel that a provider is comfortable in this environment, then they themselves won't feel comfortable, obviously. So much work is done to have that comfortable environment in the office. And then it does require some work and some experience to bring that into a virtual setting, and really be confident that you're able to do this in a way that's effective, that's safe, that's private, that you're ready for a possible disruption that you can't anticipate in the same way that you would in an office.
True. Yes.
So all of that, there really is quite a lot, but it seems like you found some success in this, and that you're able then to connect your students to a lot of possibilities. Would you say that there's a good percentage of your students that choose some clinical route, or would you say the vast majority of them are going into a research field and teaching, you mentioned?
Yeah, it really varies. I don't know. A lot of our undergraduate students are very interested in the clinical route.
Sure.
And then I would say about half of our graduate students are probably interested in pursuing that at a later date. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's pretty common interest for sure.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to give you a surprise question, so take your time on this one, but what is something that you would want our audience, whether it's those already in clinical practice or those who desire to be in some form of clinical practice or even in research? I don't say even as if it's less than, but majority of our audience is seeking or in a clinical role. What's something that you would want to leave as advice that's been helpful to you?
I think, I'm trying to the advice that's been helpful to me. Yeah, and it sounds cheesy, but I keep thinking of just like really following your passion. I have a magnet on my refrigerator. I'm tempted to go run out and grab it to remember what it says, but it's
You should do it.
it says something. It's about it's an Oprah quote, but it's about it's following your passion and basically like do what you love and it'll all work itself out. And that's not the quote, but it's basically like, kind of like following what excites you, following what energizes you, what brings you, like what feels easy and exciting and you feel energized by, and like the paychecks will follow potentially. And I know it's easy in a privileged place to say,
Sure.
that, but it truly does feel like if you're listening to what excites you and what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, the universe, will open doors for you that you might not expect. So, just even if
That's really great advice.
Yeah, like you have a niche or something that's just really of interest to you, just kind of try to follow that passion and see who you might meet. And I will also just say people love talking about themselves. And so like, don't be afraid to like follow your passion, and the people that you meet that are living that passion or doing the things that you want to do, talk to them, like take that risk to introduce yourself, ask them how they got there, ask them what their advice to you would be. Just really don't think you're imposing on people, because again, people love to share their story.
That's great advice. I think we often take the people we idolize and put them on a pedestal as if they've always been there in that role or in that capacity or with those skills, whatever it might be. And there's a story that they're eager to share. That's so great. And I'm actually feeling very grateful that you shared your story. You've inspired me. And the path that you've chosen that, like you said, was winding and unexpected and brought you into something very fulfilling. So I hope it continues to do that for you, and I'm going to wish you the best, and anyone who's listening or watching, I wish all of you the best as well. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Wall, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise.